Hi, everyone, and welcome to Elevate Your Life on Dr. T TV. I'm Dr. T, and this is the place where emotionally sensitive people get the emotional tools that they need to succeed. With me today is an incredible guest who asks us this question. Is it possible that the hope for humanity is trapped in the hearts of women? Our guest today is the author of an award-winning book that inspires women to free themselves from the universal mindsets standing in the way of their ultimate success. The book is Your Lion Side. Discover the power within and live your fullest potential. Live your fullest life, excuse me. Kimberly Faith, welcome to the program.
I am delighted to be here, Dr. T.
This is so wonderful. I just have been following your work and I'm really connecting today to that lion inside. And
wonderful.
Right. And I'm excited for us to collaborate and just bring forth, tools that help people transform their life and live that fullest life and fullest potential. And, boy, do we all need that lion side. We need to connect with that today. So we need to connect with that in this world now more than ever with what's in front of us to really be able to elevate our lives the way that we want to. And so I just want to get started today by having you tell us a bit about your journey that really, brought you to where you are today and through the leadership that you have done with, so many leaders in Fortune 500 companies. And,
Sure.
You're very influential. So give us a sense of how this journey, what this journey's been like and about for you.
Sure. So there's two sides of the journey. The first is the professional, and then the second will be the personal. So I've had the privilege to train or coach over 30,000 leaders now, from leaders with 33 different countries, 24 different industries. So I've been at this for a while, right? And I've had it's been a distinct joy to be with people starting off their career all the way up to the C-suite. What was interesting is, as I've done that, though, is I started to discover that there were some mindsets that were like in our collective subconscious. And you really tap into this with your work. I loved reading your manifesto, and you really tuned into that very early in your life. Is that fair?
It's very true. It's very true. That's why I'm so happy we're together today.
And so what I did is, my expertise is in what's the discipline systems thinking. And at the simplest way to say it, it's about being able to see the forest for the trees and to dance between the two. Okay, and be able to see the stories that are happening around us, but we can't always see it. And that's why sometimes people miss it. So I learned to listen to what was not being said as much as I listened to the words that were being said. And it made a discovery that actually led to the launch of the book. I'll make it simple for you, though. Look at this beautiful picture. The basic gist is, why are we acting small like a cat when we have the strength of a lion inside?
I know. Well, Kimberly, I want to ask you more about this, but you're really hitting on something that is so important. That is, I really invite all of our emotionally sensitive audience to really connect with here. And we're talking about a paradigm or a framework that we've been conditioned for, where we think we're seeing reality in a certain way. And in reality, there's a whole nother level of what's going on. And when you can train yourself, as I know that you do in the world, Kimberly, to see things in a much more clear way, it really makes the ability to actually utilize all your power more.
It does. It does. And what's so interesting is the world has trained us not only to play small, but the life has been so busy that we don't listen to that quiet, that quiet voice inside, and we bury it and we bury it and bury it, and then eventually it bubbles up. And so your work has actually brought great clarity to say you don't have to wait till it explodes.
Right. We don't have to wait for the crisis.
Right.
To really roar, right? As it would be.
And that was actually, it was a personal crisis that really taught me that. So I fought an eating disorder from early in my life. It took me many, many decades to overcome it. And I remember when I was first starting my healing journey, I literally had to print out a solid 1 page of different feelings because I had no idea what I was feeling. You know, when many of us are in situations in life where the only way to get through it is to numb that pain, it becomes deep, deep, deep down. And I literally, it was really pitiful, Dr. T. I literally would hold the sheet in front of me and say, which feeling is this? And it took me a year or two to tune in to what was a feeling. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, this is so amazing, Kimberly. And as really sisters in the world who have gone through, who really, had this eating disorder journey, and just knowing the pain of it, knowing really the prison of it that I was in from a very young age, somewhere around 11 or so. And this prison that went on and was really also the impetus to say, I'll just keeping it real. At a moment where I had been binging and was going to purge, I just saw myself, and I saw myself, with God watching, and I thought, here I am with all this successful ability and a successful life, but this is what's going on the inside, and this is not who I am, nor is this who I intend to be. And I've got to get clear about this to understand what is driving this, besides whatever I already knew, because whatever I knew wasn't really changing it. Right. And so to your point, it's like, you got to go deeper, right?
Well,
you got to go deeper.
You do. And what's really important is that we have not been trained very much to look at the system as a person. So one of the things that I do when I'm working with leaders is actually have them map out their system, and then I show them how it roars to life. The systems that we interact with, whether it's our corporate systems or healthcare or education or government, each system roars to life and it becomes a real person. It is every bit as powerful as you and I sitting here right now. And so I actually encourage people to name their system, whatever is swirling around them that they cannot see, name it. And having a conversation. Because here's what happens is so many of us are taking on to our shoulders, onto our back, things that are wrong with the systems. The messages that we've been given through the media system, the education system that said, check this box and follow this rule, and those systems, those are not our issues, but we've been carrying them as our issues.
This is amazing, Kimberly. And I love, there is such liberation when one, through whatever crisis it is, or whatever the pain and suffering is, when we really start to look deeper, which I feel is so, this is one of our some of our conditioning in the matrix of systems in the world is actually not to look deeper, right? And to run from it. And of course, we all know that when somebody's like, well, let's look at what's going on emotionally. I mean, that's code for like, run away. Yeah. That is not a roaring thing. And so what you're talking about, to me, really feels like, this absorption, right, of all the messages, all the conditioning, without knowing we are part of this huge system. Yes. And we're getting all of that. And then it starts to create our system of ourselves. Right.
Absolutely.
And before we know it, we're kind of tracking like a system going, frustration, anger, irritation, impatience, and then we just reactively end up like potato chips,
Well, and those are those belief systems, and I saw you refer to a lot of that in your manifesto. And what in my systems world, I call them mental models. And so, what are they? They're the lens through which we see the world. Okay.
Yes.
So it's not that it's good or bad or right or wrong. They simply are. What's dangerous though is that most of the time we don't even know we have them on.
Don't.
So that's big deal. And so when you take this collectively, we are living here at the edge where every single rule, guideline, workplace norm, societal expectation has been seen through the lens of history, which is the lens of his story.
His story. Oh my gosh. And Kimberly, I may, if I may, I really I want everybody to go get those glasses and recognize that, because we need to understand this is really powerful. I think of it as conditioning and frameworks and mental. This is really what's so important for us to know, because there's so much that happens when you don't even recognize there's the lens that's going on. So you could even check in with the lens to decide which lens would I like, if I were changed in glasses. And
yes.
Yeah.
And I often will have a whole series of glasses to show somebody which lens are you wearing today. and see, the challenge is we've really become trapped in this polarized view of men versus women when we all have both the masculine and feminine principle inside of us. Now, when we think about the lens of his story, the dilemma is that the lens of his story has been only half a lens.
Yes.
Okay. So it's, the whole world has been created through only looking at one side of it. And we're needing to move to this concept of her story, which always evolves into our story. And when that happens, then we begin to acknowledge the feelings. Because how is it, Dr. T, that we've had decisions made in the world where feelings have not played any role? I have several examples, but
Yes.
So let's just think, for example, so when we look at our systems that were created a long time ago, I recently ran across an article from a healthcare group where, did you know that it is common practice in 45 states in this country that a woman can go in for surgery and end up having pelvic exams by multiple people without her knowledge?
This is news to me, so thank you. Yeah.
So, and when I first found out about that, I remember being very upset. What it was a long time ago, it was put into place that they needed to practice, and medical students could, you could have 15 or 20 people have given you a gynecological exam under the guise of practicing. Okay. So when you think back to that, my first reaction, now that I'm very in tune with feelings, my first reaction was anger. And then I went back and I said, in what universe did someone think that was okay? In what universe did someone say, well, that's simply, it was efficiency? And see, the beauty of the lens of his story is that the focus that energy brings is terrific. That's how we made the advances that we have.
Yeah.
And it often misses the subtler sides of respect and dignity.
Yeah, it's not in court. This is so important. Oh my gosh, what a revelation. And instead of incorporating what's our total vision and outcome,
yes,
we have these certain outcomes. I was actually talking to a client recently, and she was saying so much about like how much she wanted to be understood. And while I know that that's a very important mental model and that's a very important priority, I asked her, was this your biggest vision? Just to make sure that your partner understood you? Or was it was the vision bigger than that? And it was, it was so much more fulfilling and passionate. And so instead of being just about the efficiency piece or one part of it, which is a lens, I'm now really, really appreciating this metaphor so much. We got to be asking ourselves, what's our fuller vision here? Because then the creative process starts going, here's how we can accomplish all of it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And that was a lesson that I had to learn. So as a woman in the corporate space, my masculine energy was pretty strong. So that was really the only way that many of us could be successful in that system. And it was very frightening to me. 10 years ago, I lost everything and I had to start my life completely over, reimagining every perspective that I had. And I took what I call these models, out of my head, and I looked at each one and I said, where did it come from? And do I still want it? And I remember reaching a point that I discovered 80% of what was in my head wasn't mine.
Yeah.
And in that moment is when my life shifted, hugely shifted. And that's when, when I really began to discover my real power, because it actually became the leverage for my life. And learning how to be vulnerable, learning how to be okay with not being that whole polished perfection, learning how to be real, made me more powerful, more influential than what I thought I was before.
Wow. I feel such a relationship to your experience and parallel journey here. And what I know so many people are moving through in this day and age, so much awakening, so much consciousness growing, which is, it's just such a courageous thing because the conditioning is so strong. The way conditioning works, and I see physics working, right, as an object in motion stays in motion until acted upon by another force. So, whatever we've been used to, it's got all this momentum, and it really is taking our lion self and roaring. I'm really getting this roaring, not in the like roaring out of control, but in the powerful. Hear me and let's break this wide open. Yeah.
All right. What you captured. I want to pause there because that was powerful.
Yeah.
So on which syllable are you going to place the emphasis?
Yes.
Because I really did. When I first was clumsily working my way through having my voice, I did do it in a bit of an abrasive way, and a maybe a fear-based or a strength, like clobber somebody over the head. And I discovered the hard way that doesn't work. I discovered that when I'm talking about roaring, a lion can step right in and not even speak, and the strength of them standing there, and the beauty and the magnificence, that was also strength. And I learned to appreciate that and come from a place of love. And the shift was my intention, Dr. T. So I see your little love sign right there behind your shoulder.
Yeah.
I started to shift where I was coming from when I walked into the room. Was I coming from needing to be the authority or the expert, or was I coming in with genuine love to serve the people who I was with that day? And when I took a moment to shift, then everything else I radiated shifted.
I love this. And Kimberly, this is so important for everybody to understand, because we are when I'm really connecting the dots here, we're so in, what you're talking about is all the systems, and as you said, like, we're carrying it, we're absorbing it and then carrying it. And then we're not connected completely to our full intention. And we don't even know we're in a pattern. You could be going to do something that is very responsible, very important, but you're in some sort of conditioning or pattern going into it, then brings like emotions of tension or things, and you don't know you're passing that on,
Well, you're living that example right now. So let's just take the concept of the mask, okay? If we choose to wear the mask out of fear, okay, that is an emotion, a signal that we're sending out to the world, and that is one feeling. If we choose to wear the mask out of love, consciously choosing to do it out of love, that we've released the fear for ourselves, then that is another intention. And what people don't realize is that when we walk through the world, what those feelings are inside radiates, it sends ripples out in such a magnitude that people have underestimated that thought creates. And when we're not conscious of what feeling is driving that thought, then are we creating what we really want to create?
And this is what I keep noticing, Kimberly, is that when I look into the world, I see, because this is my paradigm, I see everything amazing. That's my conditioning. I've reconditioned myself out of the years ago, really out of the paradigm of what, when people go, well, this isn't working and this isn't happening and they didn't do this, or rather than, okay, what is occurring? And to be able to see that and have that be more of what you're building off of, and have the secondary part recognizing this part,
Sure.
this part isn't where we want it to be, because this is how I see that we get a mixture of outcomes. We've got some of the most beautiful things that humans can ever make. When we have this throughout our whole the fabric of humanity, from the beginning, all this beauty that humans have created and solutions and amazing technology. And then we've got this other side that really represents where we're out of intention, and more accurately in some sort of reaction, or not recognizing the lens that we are wearing when we create things that we are not intending to create. Yeah.
Sure. And, and that is a lesson that people who've been through tough times learn. So, here we are in March, all of a sudden the world gets shut down. So my daughter just graduated from college. I was like, before COVID, I was thinking, this year I'll finally get on track. I've finished paying college. Here we are. I had all kinds of plans. I was booked all the way to the end of the year. And then within a matter of 10 days, all of my business was canceled, which threw me back to 10 years ago when I lost everything. And so in that moment, I call it our pivot zone, that space between action and reaction. Mm-hmm. In that moment, okay, it was not an easy moment. I know people all over the place are dealing with this right now. I remember I was fighting that old version of, well, there you go again, I can't get ahead. I mean, that moment that just goes, doop.
Mental model. Yeah.
And yes. And so I said, Kim, that's a powerless place to be. You made a decision to be powerful. What is your new lens going to be? And so as challenging as it took me a day or two to finally work through that. But I was like, okay, my lens, I put on a new lens. My lens is going to be that I expect goodness this year. And so here's what happened simply in my life. You know, I was traveling all the time. Now I've been home for 6 months, right? I was able to get one of my knee replacement surgeries that had been scheduled for the end of the year, which alleviated pain. I've spent more time with my husband, and I was here for the loss of our mother-in-law, who at 104. I wasn't on the road, you know, and I just did something spontaneous this past weekend. I've decided that I'm going to learn to ride a motorcycle, and I have ridden with him before. And so I bought my own motorcycle this weekend, signed up for the class and said, do it. And so I invited goodness into my life. I invited goodness into my life.
This is huge, because this is the paradigm of what is, right? And I think this is where we gain, like, I think of something like where people are going, you know, I'm trying to save time or it's like, what are we gaining? And if we assign value to everything, it's all about what we're gaining. And all of that, you know, same thing here, going, okay, you know, whatever it is that I'm supposed to gain here in this experience, it has a right in that moment, then you start to have the lenses for it.
Dude.
And that's such a perfect example, because otherwise, you know, we know how powerful language is creating everything, thoughts are creating everything.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you even start going into the loss column, there's a perpetuating experience of that as you said, like, we're resonating with everything. So those impulses are going out into the universe, they're impacting other people. And this is where you and I both know that people they're powerful creators, whether they recognize it or not. So to know what you're going to process is like you're emanating everywhere.
You know, what's interesting, you made a very important point about language. Language is the indicator of what's really going on that we haven't paid attention to. So having coached lots of executives, I can figure out what is bubbling underneath simply by their language. When I hear someone saying very heavy words like I have to, and I can't, and I must, and I should, and this is the way, you can feel the energy. And see, when I was 10 years ago, back in that part of my life, I remember feeling so caged in, and I could see the bars in front of me and the bars on the side of me and up to the top and the bottom. And it took me a while to figure out there were no bars behind me.
Got it.
And what I have figured out is using those words, we literally enslave ourselves into a place. And part of the reason I wrote the book and part of why I do what I do is to say there are no bars behind you. Yeah. You can step out.
Yeah. I mean, and isn't this amazing, Kimberly, that human beings are equipped with the ability to create whatever reality that they want. And yet we've taken on whatever's from the time we're growing, from the time we're a little one, and everywhere around us, whatever we're taking in on the internet or social media, whatever we're taking in the grocery store, whatever it might be, we get to keep cultivating our reality, but it's requiring our attention all the time to keep knowing I'm creating it in this moment. Like, I'm not off the job, even if I'm chilling out watching some TV or something. I'm never off the job of the reality of choosing the reality that I'm creating.
What's interesting is it feels like a job when you start the process, but you do reach a point where there is such complete alignment that it's a new way that you walk through the world. So 10 years ago, when I was going through that really tough place, trying to find my way out, I stopped watching television news.
Yes.
I did. I cut it out of my life. And I said, why am I living everybody else's reality? Get busy creating your own.
What? I know, and becoming it. And it's so fun when I think about our team here at Dr. Tracy Inc. You know, we have a whole, I know you have this with your team. There's just a way that we articulate everything, and we've trained ourselves and still occasionally, you know, we laugh at each other because we're like really thinking through our words, because it's about what is, what we're creating. And occasionally, because there is so much in the world where people are saying these words, I have to, I can't, there's, you know, people say things like, you know, nothing's working. And I'll think, okay, so if you're trying to go here, but you're starting way back here, you're completely false, and I'm already tired. But if you already recognize you're here and this is how much is working, you're really going a much smaller distance. But if you cannot see that, you're tired, you're exhausted, you're angry, and this is where that whole set of emotional patterns just start.
Yeah. Well, and that's where you start the spin, where you spin down and down and down. You know, when I was at that point where I had nothing, I was homeless, I had no money, I had no credit cards, my marriage falling apart, my business closed. I remember one of the ways that I got through it was this practice of gratitude, shifting myself. And I remember there were times when it was really hard to find anything to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And it got so simple for me that I was like, okay, I'm thankful I can see. I'm thankful I can walk. I'm thankful that cars were invented so I don't have to walk all across town in 90-degree weather, you know, so that anybody who's at a point right now who's listening, I'm not pretending those things don't exist. They do. But we have a choice in each moment, as you so graciously talk about are we going to continue spinning down, or are we going to shift the spin to go up? Are we going to find a way to bring ourselves up? I call it like I like to refer to it like a little mini hot air balloon beside you that's got a little bit of a rock at the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, table height. When we're sinking, it's going down to the ground, and you can feel it. You know, and at that moment, you can bring yourself back to neutral, and then figure out how to bring yourself up. And that
phenomenal.
Was for me.
It's phenomenal. I love this spiral. This metaphor for everyone to recognize, because it really does have that quality where you can, if you go into a certain, you know, automated reaction or conditioned response, mental model, it's a chain. It's like anger, fear, shame, guilt, and they just roll and roll and roll. And the second, you know, we ask ourselves, what's my outcome here? What's my intention? We really start to feel all of a sudden now we start to go up. Well, I'm in intention, I'm in inspiration. You start to answer one question, you start to answer that question, and then it begins its own chain of intentionality. And I think I've not necessarily said this way, that you're spiraling back upward. Yes. Into what is essentially like an emotional frequency. So you're either going down into the bowels and the trenches of hell, or you're going upward into creativity and power.
Well, and the key is awareness. So let me make it very simple, because sometimes these concepts sound so big. So let's talk about a small piece of chocolate. So when I was going through those teenage years, I learned to turn to food to bury the feelings, okay, instead of acknowledging them. And I wasn't even conscious about that. So I could consume a lot of food in a short amount of time. When I was in the middle of a very difficult first marriage, I gained 100 pounds because of that unconscious behavior. Yeah. Well, when I finally figured out, okay, that was it, the first acknowledgement was using my feelings like a source of intelligence. All right, what's going on here? And there's a difference if I'm using the piece of chocolate to ignore what's happening inside, or if I'm consciously saying, I think I'd like to, enjoy a piece of chocolate. Now, those are two different paths. Now that I'm really farther along and I love the place that I'm at in life, sometimes I still get upset and I still reach for the chocolate, but at that moment, I'm very conscious and saying, I know I'm upset, and give me the chocolate.
Yeah. Right. I'm in integrity with myself, right? Not being driven by who's driving my car to the store, I used to say. Like, who's opening up this freezer and getting the Ben & Jerry's? I'm on the ride, and what you're talking about is you're still driving. You're still in the driver's seat.
Consciously, yes. I'm in the driver's seat.
I love this.
You can't help but laugh sometimes.
A lot of people know this because I've referenced it before, but it makes me laugh because it wasn't funny at the time, but I feel like, what's getting my body out? It's thinking about the store. It's driving my car to the store and walking me through the cash register and getting some binge food. And, and then when it's like, oh, now I'm awake, and I've already gone through this cycle, which then started the cycle of shame and blame and fear and this is so different to say, oh, I'm awake, I'm connected, what's my choices here? And I love chocolate.
Right. And you know what's so interesting is that word love, I needed to see it today. So isn't it funny the way the universe works? I've come to believe that there's really only two choices. When we're at that intersection and we're feeling that spinning, we have two choices, fear or love. Am I making this choice out of fear, or am I making this choice out of love? And for me, that became a very powerful, simple way to say, which way are you going, Kim? And that love was always took me to an offensive, powerful step in life. And anytime I made a choice in fear, it took me down a defensive, powerless path of life.
This is really important. I'm really inviting everybody to, again, just really take in all of this understanding, because I know, especially for the most emotionally sensitive people in the world who are here with a great superpower, who we need their leadership. We need not only their intellect and their heart and personality and their leadership. And this is often also women, right, who are so just sensitive and caring and compassionate, and then also just stuck in these different, with these lenses, with these mental models. And, as you say, Kimberly, about how here you were, and essentially, which was a place of regrouping, resetting, and so many people are feeling like that right now. Like it is a really like a crisis, and regroup and reset. And then I know having talked to so many people, that it's hard to believe that from wherever they are and how deep they're in it and how big these emotions are and pain is, and what they've got to tackle, that they can make these internal shifts that will make these big external shifts. And here you are leading in the world in such a very big way and influencing people. And you walked yourself through that through these tools. So, what would you say was like this turning point for you, or what you feel people should know about if they're in that turning point right now, that crisis point?
I found the strength through what I loved, and that was my daughter. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. And, it was to the point where I almost took my life. I remember the moment where it was a fundamental decision, right? And the only thing that got me out of that, of course, prayer was a part of it, but was my love for my daughter, that I did not want to set her down a path. And so whatever crossroads we're at, what do you love? I remember very vividly when the Nassar case showed up, where there were all those gymnastics young women who were abused and sexually molested. And I remember listening to Rachel Denhollander, and I was listening to her and listening to the case. I was outraged. Okay. That moment where I was outraged and I wanted to take somebody down in that moment, I was like, whose fault is this? I wanted to rip somebody to shreds. And at that moment, I recognized that I can be very easily sucked into that darkness. And I said, Kim, it's going to go very deep. What do you love? And in that moment, I loved the girl's courage. I love the fact that there was a team of lawyers who finally brought this to justice. I love the fact that those girls loved each other enough to come out and make a difference. I made a conscious choice to shift my focus to love. And so as we all are in the middle of facing this, of whether it's a debate, whether it's the election, whatever's happening here in our country, we also have a choice. We can become enraged and go down and want to go blame and drag people down. And what we're doing is we're laying a boulder sinking us down to the ground. Yeah. And what we can shift and say, what do I love? I love hope. I love children. I love the fact that I want our families to be safe. I love this country. Oh. What do I love? And if we could each in the moment, no matter how dark it gets, cling to that, what do I love? Then that's going to be what saves us.
Well, Kimberly, it's very clear to me why people who are connected with you feel, and being led by you, really feel that you instill hope and inspire hope, and are connecting them to the possibilities. And this is what I really want I'm inviting all of you to really recognize that it is, because it really is a pattern of, it's the difference between arguing. There's these arguing cycles that just really go nowhere. And the difference between, this, what you're talking about, where it's coming from love, and how are we going to, love ourselves and each other through up to the top of the spiral. And that can feel really, that takes some emotional strength. And how I talk about it is it takes emotional strength, and you have to train that strength. And to your earlier point, you know, I always say it takes effort to become effortless at it, because you're conditioning those new responses.
Yeah.
And you are, we both talk about this, you are harnessing that power. And it really takes, it is its own form of like emotional gymnastics to like contain it and channel it into something and then begin to build off of it. And this is why it is so important, I feel, for people to really do what you talked about earlier as well, is connect to the emotions that they're experiencing. And if they don't understand them, to grow a connection with themselves. So you can have that one sheet and be going through, what is it that is occurring? What am I registering? And where do I'm thinking now, where do I want to go up this register? Right. And also very key that you have a purpose. And your daughter, you had many of them, obviously, Kimberly, but your daughter, any purpose allows us to have some leverage for ourselves to grow from.
Well, yes. And the whole premise of the book, not only was it the generational changes that we have the opportunity to create in the world right now, but my other passion is also a global sisterhood, because I work with women all over the world. And one day when I came home from Singapore and I came home to the US, and I saw women not claiming their power, and I thought, wow, how lucky we are to have it. If we shift our ability to be able to use our voice, then that too will also ripple across the world to be able to impact our sisters around the world. And that is what motivates me, that love. So love is always going to propel us forward.
Kimberly, tell us more. I want to know, I know everybody wants to know more about what they, you know, what they'll learn in the book, because this is really powerful and important. And it is time for us to be community. And so we're required to. We're in a worldwide emotional crisis at this point. So
we are, and I believe that's where I became very aware that I believe hope for humanity is trapped in the hearts of women. I believe when women really begin to understand how powerful that compassion, that love, and our ability to step out and say, this is not happening on my watch anymore. I love this world too much. Right? So in the book, what I did is I outlined the 7 belief systems, the universal belief systems that I discovered. People can download this at Your Lion Inside. And what I did is, in the red zone is what we want to stop and be aware of. I made it like a traffic light analogy. When we open it up and we go to the yellow zone, okay, I've taught you how to rewrite that belief so that you can slowly move into your power. And we want to go to the green. That's where we want to go. That's where the freedom is. And it was very important to me to map this out in a 1-pager so that we could stick it in our briefcase, stick it in our purse, and in that moment discover, how can I shift what's happening in my life? And these were universal, talking about the system, Dr. T. Too many women were thinking that these issues that we were dealing with personally was simply our story. And it was across the globe.
Okay.
Across the globe. And I believe that our generation has the power. We have, one foot in the past and one foot in the future. We're straddling the present. And when I lived with my 100-year-old mother-in-law, I learned how short 100 years was, and that we were still carrying beliefs, internal beliefs from 100 years ago. And we have the power today to shift it for 100 years out. And isn't that something to love?
This is really powerful. And the one sheet makes so much perfect sense, right? Because we need to be able to, in everyday life, be able to check in and have something that is not overly complicated.
Yes.
Like, there's so many beautiful frameworks in the world, spiritual frameworks and frameworks of every kind. And I love them all. I love them, and I love to learn from them. And it's about having something that's practical and tactical in the moment where life is happening. And we need an upgrade in that moment, right?
Yes. And I mapped that out in the book, and I shared stories of women who actually increased their salaries by 33%, 51%, 66%. And please know, I do this work for both men and women. So that's what I do. Just last week alone, I had trained, from 14 different countries, 7 different companies. This is what I do every week. And my most effective life was when I was able to have that energy come from the heart. That took me a long time to learn, but I've got it down pat now.
I could feel it. Well, and I love this shift from, from history. I mean, of course, this all, when you really look at things, you go, you see what all these words, how they came from, because even the subconscious, that word, you know, and as it was created by, I guess it would be, you know, by our English speaking population, it's like that shift that is like, our life is not through the lens of another person, not just another male, but not another you know, any other human being, that a connection to ourself creates. It's our story, but isn't that great? I just thought of this. Our story works whether I'm talking about me or talking about all of us together.
Amen. There you go.
That is so cool.
There you go. And talk about subconscious. You know, I remember at that moment when I went, history is his story. Oh my goodness, that explains a lot. And then I remember the moment that I said, I looked down and I saw my Apple phone, because I had just finished a meeting that morning where a woman, we'd had a little simple exercise where somebody said, who would you like to meet, dead or alive? And somebody said, well, I would want to meet Eve and tell her not to bite the apple and ruin the world. And I went, whoa, that is some serious programming. And then I went, there it is. Every day we're reminded of how we ruin the world.
Wow.
That's something else, somebody else's story, whether it's purposeful or unconscious, either way. But now I see it and I'm going, nope. I'm here to write an entirely new story, and I am not accepting the box that the world has placed me in.
This is so cool. So everyone, right, really being able to see, really being able to, you know, this is the emotional scientist also talking here, like seeing all patterns, seeing all connections, and coming into a way in which that starts to just become automated, so that you really aren't, I mean, I'm getting this, Kimberly, that you really aren't just on autopilot and then having more of the program continue because you didn't realize we were programmed with this version of the Apple story, and then we've got this version, and you don't know what dots are getting connected and lowering your sense of empowerment at any given time.
And there it is. And so, and then in each conscious moment you go, oh yeah, I see the story that's being sent to me. No, I don't think so.
Right. I'm choosing. Now, Kimberly, we're getting such a good flavor of what it's like for people to be able to work with you and be led by you, and to be in this sphere, you know, of your leadership. What else can people expect? You know, we want everybody. We're going to talk about. We want everybody to you know, they're going to watch this show, but then really connect with you. And what are some things that people should know about, whether it's, you know, becoming a client, or what can they expect, the kind of results and experience?
So I have worked with some of the top companies in the world, and if people are interested in hiring me there, they can reach out to me at kimberlyfaith.com or on LinkedIn. They'll see a lot of my interaction on LinkedIn. Women who want to download find out more information about the book or the brochure, yourlioninside.com. It's also available on Audible. Okay, where you actually have a chance to hear from, I have some bonus interviews where you have a chance to hear from the women who, that moment where they chose a different lens, changed their life. So much fun. Oh my gosh. And then I also have a podcast called the Sisterhood Report. You can find it on all regular podcast channels.
Oh, that sounds great. This sounds excellent. I'm going to be subscribing and following, or no, I'm already subscribed, but I'm going to be tuning in, because this sisterhood is something I just already feel uplifted by this vision of yours, because right there, it's the power to be connected, and even just the reference point that we really are a sisterhood, and that we can be, especially as women, with the programming, the competitive and scarcity programming, where, you know, parts of us just deeply want to collaborate together and be in this warmth and love together, and then the other parts of us are programmed to compete and be in scarcity and turn on each other and not allow each other to ascend into higher frequencies, because there's like a fear we won't, you know, we'll leave you behind, or we'll be left behind.
And that's the choice that we're each going to need to make in every moment from this point on. I had a wonderful woman that was very inspiring, and she said, I am in the room to heal the room. I am in the room to heal the room. And I believe that's what women offer right now. So we can't change everything all at once.
Yeah.
But if we were to walk through the world knowing that I am in the room to heal the room, that if my family's having difficulty with what's happening, I can radiate love and lift them all up. If I'm walking into the grocery store, I can radiate that love, that groundedness, that sense of hope, and I can lift those people up. So wherever we walk, whoever, both men and women, because I want the men to hear this too. I see men making these choices as well. My first step was working with the women, but I'm mapping it out for men as well. And they're also tuning into that emotional sensitivity, because we all need to reimagine how the system has worked. You know, without vision, the people will perish. And what has been created, it's time for it to be dismantled and an entirely new reality created with a very different paradigm.
You're really having me think of something else that I want to add here, because, you know, I've done the same thing, or I've done the same thing in terms of recognizing, you know, where the power of women, and where they're not just acknowledging it first and foremost, so that they can be connected to it and be fueled by it, and not be so tired, by the way, and worn out by being out of their power. But years ago, I can remember I was like dating in Manhattan, and just like the Sex and the City show, you know, you're at brunch and all the girls are talking about like who didn't call and all of this stuff. And I really had this a moment of clarity about, you know, men's experience, because there's this automatic judgment. And I thought to myself, well, let's be clear here. These men are also all conditioned. They didn't, none of these,
Yes.
at least the generation of people that I was dating at the time, they didn't ask for this conditioning. They're part of a long chain of male conditioning, you know, that's like acting like they're not even emotional creatures, and all they can do is execute. And I thought, you know, their conditioning is creating this as well. And so if I'm judging that, then I'm adding to the struggle. And so when I thought, when I go on dates, this is where it started before I brought it into my work, my initial data, you know, as a scientist here, was what would it be like if I went into these dates supporting these men rather than expecting them to play out patterns of coming closer in a date, but then 3 dates later, you don't hear from them, which is conditioning, you know? And so I shifted this into my work. I remember thinking at first, like a lot of women do, it's all about helping women. And I'm so glad that I had that shift before I went from being a corporate trainer to a psychologist doing more clinical / performance-based work, because I ended up having 60% of men in my practice initially. And I got to learn so much about what it feels like to be a man who is also conditioned and trying to figure this out, and not in their power in certain ways. And it was really, really important as a woman to hear. And so I love, because it really, it's like, we want to help our girls. And
a very important part of the story, you know, and we create safe spaces for them to acknowledge that. You know, I coach very high level executives, and I can't tell you the number of times either the tears have flown, much to their surprise, or a deep story that they haven't thought about in 30 years bubbles up. And when we learn to walk through the world without judgment, and that takes effort. Judgment is like a gray cloud around us. When I trained myself out of as much judgment, I'm almost there, okay? So it sometimes bubbles up, but I started to say, anytime something came up, I would go, that's interesting. Now, sometimes it was through gritted teeth. That's interesting, because everything in my body wanted to judge it, and it stayed in the neutral zone. That's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. And I found moving out of that judgment space invites us to be available to help heal the world. And so anybody who's listening that says, oh, well, I haven't published a book, or, oh, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, I would say to them right now is that you simply being here and breathing and doing your own self-work is enough to make the world a better place.
Yeah. And I really want, in our collaboration, we're just everybody, your audience, my audience, the audience. This is a human evolution that we are in. And even that, to me, I just got today, is so much more important, right? That this is a human upgrade that we need to be making. And, this has me just feeling so privileged that we get to share these concepts and perspectives and intentions with people to consider and take forward. And on that note, Kimberly, my last question for you is one that I really I think is so important, because we all, you know, those of us been on a conscious path and in conscious leadership, we've learned a lot, we know a lot, and also wherever somebody's starting, it helps to have something very, very clear and simple that they can deeply connect with. So I always think about, you know, if this were your last moment on earth, but I always say, like, nothing bad's happening, but just, you know, this is the moment where you are giving this important message that, if you imagine people carrying it through their life and through the generations in their family, and this is that they say, you know, Kimberly taught me that, what would that message be?
There is always hope. And the word hope to me means harness our power every day.
Harness our power every day.
So
There is always hope. There is always hope, everyone, to harness our power every day. And so, Kimberly, I just want to thank you for being with us and having just such a beautiful time together. And both, I know Kimberly and I are inviting all of you to take all of these tools, apply them into your life, and roar, roar, roar. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Take care.